Hello again. I hope you've had a good week. Thanks for taking the time to join me today. We have a very important topic we'll be discussing today that definitely relates to pursuing health and stewarding our body for His glory. To briefly review, last week we looked at some of the biblical principles involved of being good stewards of our body. In 1 Corinthians, we looked at the fact that our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit and that we're supposed to be good stewards of our body to glorify God. Also, we looked at the concept that we must do this in moderation as we pursue being healthy, things like exercise, that this must be done in the right balance, and the Bible does speak to that. We also then focused on the main topic of exercise last week, and we saw that exercise is a very important part of health. Regular exercise should be a part of our weekly routines, and ideally 30 minutes of exercise 5 times a week would be ideal to give us 150 minutes of exercise for the week. Would be something good to shoot for. We also looked at some of the key steps in beginning a fitness program, and then we looked at some of the important benefits to exercise, including heart health, immune health, and various other factors. So that was exercise last week that we covered. So this week we're going to be moving on to another equally, if not more important topic, and that is the topic of nutrition. Now, I don't know what you think of when you hear the word nutrition. Maybe you think of dieting, maybe eating fruits and vegetables, especially like lettuce and spinach all day. Maybe it's something that you might kind of be like, that doesn't sound too fun when we're starting to talk about nutrition. And unfortunately, because in our American culture we've really developed some bad habits, we're going to talk about some of the dangers of poor nutrition today and how it can affect our health and ultimately maybe affect our usefulness for God's work. What is nutrition, though? It's the process of consuming food and then having that food be used to provide growth, fuel, and to allow our body to function. And that's really when we talk about nutrition, what we're talking about. It's about the process of consuming fuel for those purposes. Now, the important thing that we're going to cover today is, well, what type of food should I be consuming? Every day, each one of us eats and makes choices, and that starts from a very young age, children eating what their parents might give them, and then as you get older, you have the freedom to choose what you would like to eat and how often to eat. So we're going to be looking at some key basics of nutrition, and then take some of those key basics and apply them to what a healthy diet should and can look like to help protect our body and to keep our body healthy. You know, it's been said that you are what you eat, and that is very true. Unfortunately, in the United States, many people do not eat a healthy diet. They don't eat nutritious food. A few key facts: 3 out of 4 people in the United States are estimated to die from a preventable diet-related disease. That's 75% of people who die are estimated that they are dying from a preventable diet-related disease. And you think about some of the major diseases that people die from: heart disease, even diabetes, kidney disease. All of those are really rooted many times in poor dietary choices. And it's very sad. It's such a burden on the healthcare system. It's sad because many people's lives are cut short from a preventable cause. You think about the fuel that you put in your body and what you're eating. It's important because those are the building blocks that your body can use for growth, for healing, for energy. It affects many things. It affects your mental ability, how much energy you have to do your tasks throughout the day. It affects even inflammation levels in your body. It affects things obviously like your weight as well. So nutrition and the food intake, very important. It can lead to health or it can lead to illness and much damage. You know, it's kind of a paradox in the United States with many states having 30-40% of their population that are obese. And you think, all right, these people are eating so much food, but what type of food are they consuming? And, you know, a poor diet that has nutritional deficiencies in it it's kind of this paradox because you have someone that's overfed, but they have all these nutritional deficiencies that are not providing what their body really needs, a lot of empty calories there. So with that discussion there briefly about maybe some of the negative decisions people are making when it comes to diet, I'd like to go over some of the key building blocks when you think of nutrition and some of the macronutrients as we're going to look at here, and then apply that to what we can look at for a healthy diet. So there's going to be three main categories of macronutrients that we're going to be talking about, and those are carbohydrates, proteins, and then fats. So we're going to start with carbohydrates. These are really one of the primary fuel sources for our body. There's simple carbohydrates, there's complex. We think of those as breads, pastas, starches, even fiber falls under this umbrella of carbohydrates. Even things like fruits and vegetables. And even things that maybe are not so healthy, sugary drinks, different sugary foods, desserts, all fall under the umbrella of carbohydrates. Now, a lot of times, especially because of certain diets that are out there now, we maybe think carbohydrates are a bad thing, and they're not. Our body needs carbohydrates to function. It just needs to be good quality carbohydrates and also in the right proportions. Carbs are broken down actually into sugar, glucose, which is a type of sugar, and that's then a very readily available energy source for our body to use. Glucose, many cells can uptake that with the help of insulin that allows the glucose to get into the cells, and then that's what provides energy for the cells to do their functions and to accomplish what they need to. Now, if you have too much glucose in the blood and it's not maybe being used and immediately used at that moment, it can be stored as glycogen in the liver, is a common organ for storage, also actually in muscle tissue, and also in fat cells. Now, fat that's ingested is one of the primary things that gets stored into fat cells, but excessive sugars and glucose can also be stored into fat cells as well. So that's something that we do have to keep in mind. I want to take a few minutes to talk about an important aspect of carbohydrates, and that's fiber. You probably haven't really thought of fiber recently, especially when you think of nutrition and what you're eating. But I want to give you some key points and benefits of why fiber should be a big part of your diet. Now, fiber, it's a carbohydrate that cannot be broken down or digested. And there's actually two types: insoluble, which is not broken down in water, and then soluble, which can be broken down in water. Most fiber, it's found in plant-based foods, is where the majority of this is found. And it's very beneficial in several ways. It's very beneficial for digestive health. It can help prevent constipation, help the GI system to work appropriately. It can actually aid in weight loss as well, because as you eat foods that are high in fiber, it actually can give you a sense of fullness. It adds bulk to your meals and allows you to stay feeling full longer, so you're not looking for that next meal too soon. It's actually been shown to lower type 2 diabetes. One of the reasons is because if you're ingesting sugary meals, if you have fiber in there, it actually helps to blunt the sugar spike in your body, and that way you don't have the cells out of the pancreas which make insulin having to work overtime to combat that high sugar level. Also, it's been shown to lower cholesterol, which is very good for heart health. And I want to touch on now, all right, so we know it's maybe in fruits and vegetables. How much fiber should I be looking to eat every day? Recommended amount of fiber would be anywhere from maybe 25 to 38 grams a day would be optimal. So you can look up and kind of calculate different fruits and vegetables, how much fiber they have, but at least be shooting for 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day. You can also get them in things like whole grains, even flaxseed, but predominantly fruits and vegetables would be one of the main ways to get fiber in your body. So I wanted to just take a few minutes and let you know that fiber is very important for your health, and that is something you should be looking to have good levels of. All right, so we've looked at carbohydrates as one of the main macronutrients. Next, we're going to look at protein. Protein is found in things like meat, fish, eggs, even milk and cheese, even nuts, seeds, beans are all very good and have good high protein levels in them. Why is protein important? It's important for building muscles. It's important for hormone production, even enzyme production, and also for your blood cells. They need to have good protein to make blood cells. They're also important for neurotransmitter production. Neurotransmitters are very small molecules in the brain and also in other nerves that help send signals across the cells to communicate with one another. So that's something in the brain that every day there are hundreds of billions of neurotransmitters that are flowing across from one cell to another to communicate, and that is important to have appropriate levels, and we need to have good protein intake to have good neurotransmitter production. Also, immune function relies heavily on proper protein levels, and then also our nerve health needs good protein levels. There are 20 amino acids, which amino acids are the building blocks of protein. Importantly, there are actually 9 essential amino acids. So what's an essential amino acid? It's one that cannot be made by the body. So those have to be received from dietary sources. Our body just cannot produce those. So that was the second macronutrient, protein. We already talked about also carbohydrates. Then the last one is fat. Fat is also another nutritional classification that probably gets a bad rap. We think that, if anything's fatty or has some fat in it, that's going to be very bad for our body. Fat is very energy dense. It actually has 9 calories per gram versus carbs, which is only 4 calories per gram. So fat carries a lot of energy in it. And fat is actually important and used in our body in many ways. The walls of cells use lipids and fats. Also, nerves and hormones rely heavily on the appropriate amount of fat in our nutrition to have those structures be healthy. Now, there are various types of fat, and it's important to realize that some fats are better than others. Saturated fats are the bad fats. Unsaturated are the healthier fats that we should be trying to ingest. So why do they call it saturated and unsaturated? Well, at the molecular level, saturated fats are completely bonded with hydrogen. These are the fats that actually can lead to more reaction, oxidative stress in our body, lead to inflammation, and can cause just more problems in our body. They can also increase cholesterol and the bad lipid levels, the LDL. When you think of saturated fats, what are those? If you're walking through a grocery store or getting ready to eat, what are the ones that you would want to steer clear of? It's mostly the animal fat. So if you have ever cooked animal meat and seen as it starts to reach room temperature and things are getting solid, that's probably the saturated fats there. Things that are in maybe fatty cuts of beef, dark chicken, even high-fat dairy. Many of those have these high levels of the saturated fats, which are not as healthy. Now, the unsaturated fats, those are the healthier varieties that we should be trying to ingest, and those would include things found in nuts and seeds and oils. Also, I want to mention that omega-3 fats are also very important, found in things like maybe salmon and other fatty fish, fish oil, grass-fed meats, and eggs. Omega-3s are important for brain health, even heart health, and promoting the good cholesterol. They can also be in higher levels, very good to promote just anti-inflammatory effect in the body as well. So omega-3 fatty acids are very good and important. The unsaturated fats are also healthy, and you should be seeking those out. Try to stay away from too much of the saturated fats, the animal fats. So we've now looked at the 3 main categories of macronutrients. I do want to take a few minutes to talk about one of the most important things when it comes to nutrition and what not to eat, and that is in the category of sugar. When we think about sugar, a lot of times sugar does get a bad rap, and rightfully so, actually. Now, there's 2 kind of categories that we can define sugar as. Whole sugar, found in things like many of the fruits, are actually overall very good for us. Partly that is because there's the fiber in the fruit as well that can help blunt the sugar spike in our blood levels. But the bad sugar is what we're looking more at, and that's the added sugar or refined sugar. That's what we need to be very careful about when it comes to how much of that we're taking into our body. There's some interesting trends when you look at sugar consumption over the last decade or so. Back in the 1950s, it was estimated that about a person in 1 year would ingest about 20 pounds of sugar per year. And then when you look at 1994, around that time, it had jumped up from 20 pounds per person per year to 120 pounds per person per year. So we clearly see that Americans now are ingesting much, much more sugar. How much should we be eating? Well, the American Heart Association recommends that men should be eating about 36 grams a day, which is about 9 teaspoons, and that women should ingest about 24 grams a day, which is 6 teaspoons. So that's for men, 9 teaspoons, ladies, 6 teaspoons. How much do most Americans have? On average, 30 to probably up to 50 teaspoons a day. That's over 100 grams per day. So in many cases, 5-6 times the amount that we should be eating. A few other examples of maybe where we're getting some of these sugars could be a can of Coke, 33 grams of sugar right there. That's 8 teaspoons. That's pretty much for men. That's your recommended daily amount of added sugar right there. What about some of the Starbucks drinks? I know I might have hit a nerve here, but a venti white chocolate mocha, 74 grams of added sugar, 18 teaspoons. So you have to be aware that sugar is not just in desserts and things like that, that many times it is found in the beverages that we drink. So that's something that we have to be aware of. And you need to make sure that you're trying to limit your amount of added sugar you're ingesting. A few things about why sugar is so bad for you. It's been shown in some of the studies that as your total calories from sugar increase, that actually then there's a correlation between an increased risk of heart disease and even death from heart disease. As you have more intake of fruits and vegetables, actually then you have a lower risk of heart disease. We already kind of touched on this, but diets that are high in refined sugar, there's going to be more oxidative stress going on in your body, more opportunity for inflammation, which is bad. And specifically when we think about things like our blood vessels, when you have oxidative stress and inflammation going on in the blood vessels, that can damage blood vessel walls. And what happens is it gives opportunity for things like the bad cholesterol to attach to those areas where there is damage to the blood vessel walls. That's how plaque formation starts. And over time, if you have more and more of these areas with damage, more and more cholesterol and plaque formation, that's what leads to the risk of heart attacks, of stroke, because as these plaques either break off and flow to the heart and brain or totally block arteries, that's what can lead to these very, very serious events in the heart or the brain that can lead to death, can lead to loss of function as well. So that's why it is very important to long-term think about your sugar consumption and how that may be affecting your health. Another reason that we don't want to be ingesting large amounts of sugar is it can lead to insulin resistance, where the insulin in your body can't really do its job as well because your body's so desensitized to it, and then you end up with just large, high amounts of sugar floating around in your bloodstream, and this is what really leads to type 2 diabetes, which is a very dangerous disease. So remember that added sugar pretty much is empty calories. It's not providing any really nutritional benefit there. In one journal, The Lancet, back in 2001, they talk about that this study that a consumption of sugar-sweetened drinks, it's associated with childhood obesity. Not very surprising there. And then when we go back and also think about in adults too, heart disease, even type 2 diabetes, these are things that actually kill millions of Americans a year. So that's why it's really an epidemic with the sugar ingestion, and why I took a few minutes to talk about sugar and why that's one of the main things that you need to be avoiding in your diet is the added sugar. And unfortunately, it's surrounding us everywhere we go, whether you're eating out or going into a gas station. So many options that have so much added sugar. So we have to be aware of it and look at ways we can minimize that in our diet. I want to very briefly touch on hydration. Obviously, our bodies are made up very much so of water, and in our cells, water is a very important part of staying nutritionally fit. Some sources say 64 ounces of water a day is a good target. Another way to calculate that could also be based on your weight. If you weigh, let's say, 150 pounds, you could then cut that in half, and you would want to drink 75 ounces of water per day. So basically, you're trying to drink half of your body weight in pounds, drink half of that in ounces a day. Another clue about your hydration status could be the color of your urine. So you can look and see if your urine is very dark and concentrated. That's a clue that you might not be intaking enough water for the day. Now, the problem with that is that it's kind of an after-the-fact clue there. So you want to try to stay ahead of that and not become dehydrated. Some signs of dehydration might include headache, fatigue, feeling lightheaded or dizzy. So we don't want to be putting our body in that position. So if you're going to be going somewhere, make sure you bring a bottle of water and try to be drinking that regularly throughout the day. That will definitely help your health. So we looked at the category of macronutrients, carbohydrates, protein, and then fats. We talked about why sugar is so bad for you. We looked at fiber and why that is good for you. And then we also talked about hydration. Very briefly, I want to talk about micronutrients. Those are vitamins and minerals. Those are pretty much things that are found in a very good, healthy, balanced diet, especially in the fruits and vegetables. I mean, have you ever thought about why do they say to eat fruits and vegetables, doctors and nutritionists? That's because there's so many good building blocks there that your body needs to function. On the cellular level, you need to have these vitamins and these minerals to allow the enzymes and the cells to function as they should. Now, when you think about vitamins and minerals, maybe many of you think about, oh, I take a multivitamin. So I wanted to just very briefly talk about dietary supplements and what the literature and the evidence says about that. You know, the evidence about taking a multivitamin or a lot of these vitamins, it's actually mixed. There's no clear studies that definitively say that, yes, you should 100% take a multivitamin. That's going to really minimize the risk of disease and make you healthy. Now, sometimes multivitamins are good, and I don't want to say that you shouldn't take one. I personally do take one right now, and they can be important for filling in nutritional gaps. But the most important thing is that you need to think about getting your nutrition from actual food. So making sure that your diet is well-rounded, that you're eating these fruits and vegetables, that you're making good choices. That's where you should be focusing on to get most of your nutrition and these vitamins and minerals from. That's the most important way to improve your diet. So you can't go out and eat a lot of sugary food and high-fat food and then think I can just take a multivitamin and I'll be fine. That's not really the best way to be thinking about that. Now, I mean, maybe some people have a genuine deficiency. You've been tested for something like vitamin D and you've been shown to be deficient. That's where a supplement definitely can be helpful. But overall, think about having your diet where it needs to be as far as being balanced and diverse. And then if you do feel like you might still need to take a multivitamin to possibly fill in a few gaps, then over time that can be helpful and something you can consider as well. As we kind of now summarize and look at how do we apply some of this information, looking at macronutrients and the micronutrients, what to eat and not to eat, really to summarize it, you need to build a healthy eating pattern. This is something that should be more of a lifestyle. There's many different diets out there, but unfortunately diets have been shown to not be sustainable for most people. So when you think about what to eat, you need to think about how can I make this a lifestyle choice, not be on a yo-yo diet where I'm restricting an entire food group for months or years on end. Overall, many of those are not very healthy and sustainable. Now, some of them do have good principles in them that you should limit sugars or limit excess of carbs, but overall, you need to be thinking more holistically about how can I make this a pattern of life. Eating across all the food groups is a good idea. So when we think about what foods, nutrient-dense foods, those are the vegetables and the fruits. So eating a good portion of those, having those fill up your meals, each meal is a good idea. And then you're going to also have the high fiber in there as well. And then you know you're going to be having a lot of vitamins and nutrients from those high nutrient dense foods. Also, antioxidants will be in there and other trace nutrients. Eating a variety is important. You don't want to just limit yourself to one or two fruits or vegetables. You want to eat a good variety because the different colors and different varieties of fruits and vegetables all have different benefits in them. Whole grains are also a much better idea than eating the very processed type foods. You think of breads, having whole grain breads versus Wonder Bread. Whole grains would be a much better option there because of the way your body can handle the carbs. It's not going to spike your blood glucose as quickly, and also have more nutritious value there as also. When you think about the proteins, trying to focus more on the lean proteins, not high fat proteins, is a good idea. Things also like beans and peas, nuts and seeds, which have healthy proteins in them. Healthy fats, so staying away from the unsaturated fats, the animal fats. One of the recommendations said that really less than 10% of your daily calories should be from the unsaturated fats. And that also is true for the added sugar as well, that less than 10% of your daily calorie intake should be from the added sugars. So when we think about what to limit, sugar, added sugar specifically, and then also sodium, because salt, excessive salt can drive up people's blood pressure, and many people as you get older might struggle with blood pressure issues, so you want to limit the salt. And then to pay attention to your beverage choices, because many times that's where some people get into trouble with the excessive sugar intake. Now, a few final tips here as we wrap up this session on nutrition. The first would be to get more familiar with food labels and make sure that you're examining the amount of protein, carbs, sugars in the foods that you're eating so you can make better choices about what you're putting in your body. Also, limit late night snacking. This is a time where many people end up eating foods that are high in sugar, and that can actually have quite a negative impact on health, even on weight. So maybe make it a goal to not eat anything else after your evening meal at dinner time. Portion control is also very important, especially if you're eating foods that are already high in calories. Making sure that your portions are well controlled, that you're not going back for seconds and thirds. That can have a big impact on keeping your calories where they need to be and keeping your weight under control as well. Make sure that you're being very conscious about your beverage choices, because as we've already talked about, this is where you could be ingesting a lot of extra added sugar into your diet, which is something we're trying to limit. Limit eating out is another way that maybe you could, this could benefit your diet. Many times when you eat out, your choices are limited. Many of the foods are high calorie. You don't have the options to choose healthier foods. So if you find yourself doing that very often, maybe that's something you can look to cut back on some and buying healthier foods at the grocery store. You might also save some money when you do that as well, because eating out can be expensive. Remember that unprocessed foods overall are the healthiest, the whole foods. Anytime you have processed foods, they're not going to be as nutritious and many times have some of the empty calories in there. And then to summarize lastly, remember that this really needs to be a lifestyle pattern. These need to be good choices that you are developing, not just to look for an easy fix with a diet, but something that you can consistently do over the years to build up good health, to improve the health and function of your body. Well, thank you for taking the time to listen today. I hope this information has been helpful for you, and maybe you'll be able to apply some of the information to your dietary choices to have a healthier body, to be more useful for him. Remember, if you need extra help with some of these topics, there are resources online. A few of them include nutrition.gov, health.gov, and also heart.org are several websites that you can visit. Also, there are certified nutritionists out there that can give you more detail and specific information for your situation. So you can reach out to them if you need that added help as well. Well, next week we'll be looking at an important topic, and that's of stress and how we can try to reduce our stress levels, what the Bible says about stress. So I hope you'll join me next week as we look at that important topic. And otherwise, I hope you have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.